18 years ago, my brother Victor stood in our father's hospital room and told me the company had no place for me anymore. Our father, Walter, was in the bed between us. He had suffered a massive stroke 3 days earlier. He could hear everything. He could say nothing. Victor spoke over him like he was furniture. He said, "Laura, be realistic. Dad's not coming back to the office. The board trusts me. And frankly, engineering was always more of a hobby for you than a career." A hobby? I had designed the filtration system that became our family company's flagship product. I had spent 4 years of my life on it. My name was on the original technical drawings. But Victor was right about one thing: the board trusted him. He was the salesman, the face, the firstborn son. Within a year, I was erased. My name came off the website. The company history was rewritten. In the official story Victor told at conferences, he had developed the technology that built Meridian water systems. I left. I grieved. I built a different life. And I never told anyone, not even Victor, about the one piece of paper I had kept. 18 years later, my brother's company was 90 days from bankruptcy, and the only thing on earth that could save it was locked inside a patent. A patent registered to Laura Kowalski. Me. This is the story of the phone call, the price, and the day my brother finally read the fine print. Chapter 1, The Beginning. Our father Walter came to this country with a toolbox and a certainty that water was the future. He started Meridian in a rented garage. Industrial water filtration, unglamorous and essential. By the time Victor and I were teenagers, Meridian had a real factory and 40 employees. Walter had 2 children and, in his mind, 2 halves of a company. Victor got our father's charm. He could sell anything to anyone. He was loud and warm in public and cold and precise in private. And from childhood he understood something I did not: that the story people believe matters more than the thing that actually happened. I got our father's hands. I took apart the vacuum cleaner at 7. I rebuilt a car engine at 16. I went to engineering school on a scholarship and spent every summer on Meridian's factory floor, where the machinists called me Little Walter, which remains the greatest compliment of my life. In graduate school, I began working on a problem that had haunted my father for years: a membrane design that could filter industrial contaminants at half the energy cost of anything on the market. I worked on it for 2 years in the university lab, nights and weekends, before I ever brought it to Meridian. And here is the detail this entire story turns on. Because I developed the core design at the university, as my own independent research, before any employment agreement with Meridian existed, my professor insisted we file the provisional patent properly. In my name, Laura Kowalski, sole inventor. When I brought the technology to my father, Walter wanted to do the paperwork correctly, license the patent formally from me to the company. But Walter had a stroke scheduled by fate for a Tuesday in October, and the formal licensing agreement was still sitting in a folder on his desk, unsigned, when the ambulance came. What existed instead was a handshake, a father and daughter, and a technology that became 80% of Meridian's revenue. For 18 years, my brother's company built its empire on a patent it never owned. And Victor never checked. Because checking was engineering. And engineering, as he told me over our father's hospital bed, was a hobby. Chapter 2, The Betrayal. I want to be precise about what Victor did after the stroke, because the details matter. He did not just push me out. He rewrote me. Within 6 months, the company website described the flagship membrane as developed by Meridian's engineering team under the leadership of Victor Kowalski. Within a year, Victor was giving keynote speeches describing the late nights he had spent perfecting the design. There is video of this. He tells the story beautifully. He describes MY late nights, details he could only have known from family dinners, in the first person. Our father lived 4 more years after the stroke. He recovered some speech, never fully. I visited him every Sunday. Victor visited on holidays, with a camera. On one of those Sundays, about 2 years in, Walter gripped my hand with his good hand and worked very hard to produce a full sentence. It took him almost a minute. He set the folder on my desk. Your paper. I said, I know, Dad. I have it. He closed his eyes. And then my father, half his face still frozen, smiled with the other half. He never mentioned it again. Neither did I. But I understood in that moment that my father knew exactly what he had left me. Not money. Victor controlled all of that by then. He had left me the truth, with a registration number on it. I moved across the country. I took a job at an environmental engineering firm, then a better one. I married a good man, a high school physics teacher named David. We had a daughter. I renewed a certain patent's maintenance fees every few years, quietly, the way you water a tree you may never sit under. And I watched from a distance as Meridian grew, on my membrane, and Victor became a regional business celebrity, on my story. People ask, why didn't you sue immediately? 18 years ago? Here is the honest answer. 18 years ago, a lawsuit would have been my word and one provisional patent against a beloved company, a charismatic CEO, and a legal budget 50 times my savings. They would have argued implied license, shop rights, family agreement. Maybe I win after 5 years and $500,000 in fees. Maybe I lose and I'm the bitter sister who attacked her dying father's company. My father taught me engineering. Engineering teaches you this. Do not apply force where the structure is strongest. Wait for the load to shift. For 18 years, I waited for the load to shift. Chapter 3, The Decision. The load shifted on a Thursday in September. I learned about it the way the whole industry did. A trade publication headline. A massive European conglomerate, Aquacore, had sued Meridian Water Systems for patent infringement on a newer secondary technology, seeking damages that would end the company. Meridian stock, Victor had taken it public 6 years earlier, lost 40% in a week. I read every filing. It is remarkable what is public if you know how to read it. And buried in Meridian's legal defense, I found the strategy their expensive lawyers had built. Meridian's entire counterargument rested on prior art, on proving that the foundational membrane technology predated Aquacore's patents. If Meridian's core technology was older, Aquacore's claims collapsed. There was just one problem with that defense. To prove the foundational technology's age and ownership, Meridian needed the original patent. The one from the university lab. The one filed in the name Laura Kowalski. I sat at my kitchen table with the court filings spread out, and I started to laugh, and then I cried, and my husband David came in and asked what was wrong, and I said, nothing is wrong. For the first time in 18 years, absolutely nothing is wrong. The company that erased me could only save itself with my name. 2 weeks later, my phone rang. A number I did not recognize, from my old home state. It was Victor. His voice was smaller than I remembered. He asked how I was. He asked about my daughter, whose name he got wrong. And then, after 4 minutes of theater, he arrived at the point. He said, Laura, the lawyers found some old paperwork. There's a filing from your university days, a formality, really, that we need to clean up for the litigation. I'll send you a document to sign. We're prepared to pay you for your time. $52,000. A formality. 18 years of my erased name, the foundation of a 9-figure company, the defense against a lawsuit that would destroy him. And Victor was still selling, still framing, still betting that his little sister would not read the fine print. I said, send me the document, Victor. He sent it. It was an assignment agreement, signing over the patent, all rights retroactively for $50,000, with a non-disclosure clause and a clause waiving all past claims. I read it twice. Then I called the best intellectual property attorney on the West Coast, a ferociously calm woman named Ms. Ortiz, and I said a sentence I had been preparing, without knowing it, for 18 years. I said, my brother's company is built on my patent, his survival depends on it, and he just offered me $50,000 hoping I wouldn't notice. I would like to negotiate properly. Ms. Ortiz was quiet for a moment. Then she said, Mrs. Kowalski, this is the best phone call I have received in a decade. Chapter 4, The Evidence. What Ms. Ortiz assembled over the following month was not a claim. It was a fortress. The original provisional patent, with my sole inventorship, predating any Meridian employment agreement. My graduate lab notebooks, I had kept all of them, every page dated and witnessed, because my professor was old school about documentation. The unsigned licensing agreement from my father's desk, which proved Meridian's own founder had recognized the patent was not the company's. 18 years of maintenance fees, paid by me, from my personal accounts, an unbroken chain of ownership, and then the material that turned a strong case into an unanswerable one. Victor's own speeches. Ms. Ortiz's team collected every recorded keynote, every interview, every printed profile in which Victor described developing the technology himself. Under oath, each of those statements would become a separate problem for him, because they proved the company had knowingly built its public story, its investor disclosures, its entire valuation, on an inventorship claim its CEO knew to be false. He had not just used my patent. He had testified against himself, on stage for 18 years, with a microphone. Ms. Ortiz sent Meridian's board, not Victor, the board, a formal notice. It laid out the ownership record and offered a path. A proper license, negotiated at market terms, which would simultaneously arm their defense against Aquacore. The response took 11 days, which Ms. Ortiz said meant war inside the boardroom. I believe it. Because when the reply came, it did not come from Victor's lawyers. It came from the board's independent counsel, requesting a meeting with me. The meeting took place in a glass conference room 40 floors above the city where my father once rented a garage. 7 board members, their lawyers, Ms. Ortiz, and me. Victor was there too. He did not speak for the first hour. He looked, for the first time in my memory, like a man in a room he did not control. Their counsel walked through the record. Then the chairman, an older man named Whitcomb who had known my father, took off his glasses and asked me one direct question. He said, "Mrs. Kowalski, what do you want?" And I gave him the answer I had spent 18 years earning the right to give. Chapter 5. The Justice. I said 3 things. First, the license. Meridian licenses the patent at fair market terms, calculated by independent valuation, including reasonable back royalties. Not punitive. Fair. This company employs 600 people, and my father built it, and I will not burn the house down to punish one man inside it. Your defense against Aquacore begins the day we sign. Second, the record. The company's history gets corrected. Publicly. My name returns to the technology one invented. On the website, in the filings, in the museum piece lobby display with my father's first prototype. Every future description of the membrane names its actual inventor. Third, I looked at Victor for the first time in the meeting. The board hears from me in his presence exactly what happened in that hospital room 18 years ago. Not for the lawyers. For the record. Because my father heard every word that day and could not answer. Someone should finally answer for him. The room was very quiet. Then Chairman Whitcomb put his glasses back on and said, "Mrs. Kowalski, I believe we can work with all 3. The license was signed 5 weeks later. The independent valuation of back royalties came to a number I will not say aloud, except to tell you that my daughter's children's children will study whatever they want, wherever they want." The Aquacore lawsuit collapsed 4 months after that, destroyed by prior art, documented in lab notebooks written by a graduate student named Laura Kowalski, decades before Aquacore filed anything. Meridian survived. 600 people kept their jobs. My father's company lives. Victor did not survive as CEO. The board's investigation into 18 years of false inventorship claims, with all its implications for investor disclosures, made his position impossible. He resigned to pursue new opportunities. His settlement was modest. His speaking invitation stopped. The story he had spent 18 years telling was quietly corrected in every archive that had ever printed it. He called me once after everything. He said, "You could have destroyed the whole company. Why didn't you?" And I told him the truth. I said, "Because I'm an engineer, Victor. We don't destroy structures. We fix them. The company was never the broken part." He was silent. Then he hung up. We have not spoken since. I am at peace with that in a way I did not expect to be. Last spring, I flew back for the unveiling of the corrected lobby display, my father's first prototype under glass, and beside it, the original 1980s technical drawings, with the inventor's name restored. My daughter stood next to me reading the little plaque. She is 15, and she takes apart everything in our house, and the machinists at her school's robotics lab have started calling her little Laura. She read the plaque and said, "Mom, they really thought you'd just sign it away for $50,000? I said, "They thought I'd never check. People who rewrite history always believe nobody kept the original." She thought about that. Then she asked, "So what's the lesson?" "Wait 18 years. No, I told her. The lesson is what your great-grandfather knew when he insisted on doing the paperwork properly, and what your grandmother of a professor knew when she made me file that patent in my own name. The lesson is, the truth doesn't need you to fight every day. It needs you to file it, date it, keep it, and renew it, quietly, patiently, year after year, until the day the load shifts. They erased my name from the story. They forgot my name was on the patent. I kept the notebooks. I kept the filing. I kept 18 years of maintenance receipts. I kept the receipts. And the receipts kept me. Thank you for being here for this story. New story every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. If you have ever been erased from something you built, this channel is for you. Subscribe. I will see you in the next one. But I skipped over the hardest years. Let me go back, because this story is not honest without them. The first year after the hospital room was the worst of my life. And not because of the money. Understand what Victor actually took. Not a job. A self. I had been little Walter since I was 16. My identity was that factory floor, those machines, that membrane. When the erasure began, when my name came off the website, when colleagues I had trained stopped returning calls because loyalty to Victor was now a career requirement, I did not just lose a position. I lost the mirror I had used my whole life to know who I was. There was a night, about 8 months after I left, when David found me at 2 in the morning sitting on our kitchen floor with a printout of Meridian's new company history page. Victor's face at the top. A timeline of innovations with my years on it, and his name over them. David sat down on the floor next to me. He did not say it would be okay. He is a physics teacher. He does not say things he cannot prove. Instead, he said, they can publish whatever they want. Publishing something doesn't make it true. It just makes it published. You know the difference better than anyone alive. Then he said the thing that became a load-bearing wall in my life. Truth doesn't expire, Laura. It just waits for better lawyers. I laughed for the first time in weeks. And the next morning, I paid that year's patent maintenance fee. I want to talk about those fees, actually, because people always ask about them. Every few years, an envelope. A government form. A payment. Not large, but not nothing, especially in the early years when we were saving for a house on 2 modest salaries. David never once questioned it. My mother-in-law, who saw a statement once, asked why we were paying to maintain some old-school project. I could have let it lapse. A lapsed patent enters the public domain. And honestly, in the dark years, there was a temptation in that. Let it go. Stop watering a tree in someone else's yard. But every time the envelope came, I heard my father working out that one sentence with half a working mouth. The folder. On my desk. Your paper. A dying man spent a full minute of unbearable effort to remind me to keep the receipts. So I kept them. 7 renewals over 18 years. Each one a small, private act of defiance that nobody on earth knew about. A woman at a kitchen table, writing a check, saying to an empty room, "Not yet. But someday." There is one more scene from the middle years I need to tell you. 9 years in, Meridian's technology won a National Industry Award. There was a gala. It was covered in the trade press. Victor accepted the medal for the membrane design and gave a speech. I watched the video, everyone in the industry did, about the loneliness of innovation. About the nights he doubted himself. About persistence. He cried on stage. Real tears, as far as I could tell. I have thought about those tears for years, and here is where I have landed. I believe Victor cried because by then he believed his own story. That is the most frightening thing about people like my brother. The lie is not a costume they wear. It becomes the skin. The morning after that gala, a package arrived at my house. No note. Inside was a small framed photograph, me at 23, on the Meridian factory floor, covered in grease, grinning next to the first membrane prototype. On the back, in shaky handwriting, I remember, F. Frank, the senior machinist who had watched me build it with his own eyes. I hung that photograph in my hallway, where I would see it every single day, because Victor had the website, the speeches, the medal, and the museum lobby. But I had the machinists. I had the notebooks. I had the photograph. The witnesses of the real story are never the people on stage. They are the people who were in the room. And one more thing about the ending, the part after the ending. 6 months after Victor resigned, I received a letter from a woman named Patricia Kowalski, Victor's wife, my sister-in-law, whom I had barely known. She wrote that the collapse of the public story had collapsed private ones too. That she had spent 20 years married to the version of Victor that existed on stage. That reading the board's findings had been like discovering the architecture of her own marriage. She did not ask me for anything. She wrote near the end, "I think you are the only person who knew who he actually was all along. I wanted you to know that someone else finally knows too." I wrote back one paragraph. I told her that the man who charmed rooms and the boy who once spent an entire summer teaching me to drive stick shift in the factory parking lot were both real, and that I had spent 18 years unable to reconcile them, and that she should not spend 18 more trying. I do not know if it helped, but my father would have wanted me to send it. Walter never stopped loving both of his children, even in that hospital bed, hearing one of them erase the other. I believe he grieved for both of us. That is the part of this story that has no satisfying ending. Justice fixed the record. It did not fix the family. Some structures, once the load shifts wrong, do not get rebuilt. I am an engineer. I know the difference between what can be repaired and what can only be documented. I documented it. All of it. That, in the end, is what I know how to do. Let me leave you with the arithmetic of patience, because someone listening right now needs it. 18 years sounds unbearable. Broken into its real parts, it was 7 envelopes, 7 checks, 7 small decisions to not let the truth expire. That is all waiting actually is. Not one heroic act of endurance, just the next small renewal, done on time, when it would be easier to let it lapse. Whatever your version of the patent is, the documents, the messages, the notebooks, the photograph in the hallway, renew it. Date it. Keep it somewhere fireproof. You are not being paranoid. You are being an engineer about your own life. Because loads always shift. Companies wobble. Stories crack. The person on stage eventually needs the thing they erased. And when that day comes, when the phone rings and a smaller voice than you remember offers you $50,000 for a formality, you will open a drawer, and everything you quietly kept will be sitting there, dated and witnessed, waiting to speak for you. Truth doesn't expire. It just waits for better lawyers. Thank you for listening to all of it.